Oh my goodness, it's been too long since we have been together here in the Shed of Knowledge. I'm your old pal, John the Storyteller, here to give you some interesting information, maybe something that you didn't know. That's the idea behind this little segment anyway. So I did a thing on presidents last time, actually one president in particular, Thomas Jefferson, and I thought I would do another president this time, just something interesting about a president. And I'm not a guy who necessarily worships presidents, but if you're thinking of a group of people to be interested in, you can't do a lot better than presidents. They've come from a variety of different backgrounds all over the country. In other countries, if you count like George Washington and people that were, whenever we were a British colony. Technically, they were foreigners. But I'm going to talk about a president that's firmly rooted in the United States history, and in fact, firmly rooted in the presidency of the United States. I'm going to talk about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the longest sitting president of all time. He passed away in office, but he is one of the reasons that we now have term limits. A president is limited to 2 terms, and I think that's a very good idea, because you get tired of somebody after a while of leading you down different paths. Anyway, so the interesting thing about Franklin, I'm just going to blow my whole, usually I like to build up the twist, but there's not a lot of building up of this twist because I'm just going to have to tell it to you. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is unusual amongst American presidents, not just because of his physical infirmity or anything like that, but because Franklin Delano Roosevelt is related by birth or marriage to 11 previous presidents. He is directly related by birth or marriage to 11 of his predecessors into the presidency. One of them is George Washington, and so that's a biggie right off the bat. If you can prove lineage to George Washington, you got a leg up in the United States. But he was related directly to George Washington, then John Adams, who's second president of the United States, and then by default his son John Quincy Adams, 4th president of the United States. James Madison, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, U.S. Grant, Benjamin Harrison, Theodore Roosevelt, and William Howard Taft. That's the 11 presidents that he was related to. Now, I mentioned dynasties are not that unusual. I mean, we think about the Bush dynasty and, other, I don't know why I drew a blank, but there's other multiple Kennedys, things like that are what you would call a dynasty, and the closest you can get in America to having a dynasty, families that are constantly in the public eye. And in the case of John Adams, he and his son were both president of the United States. John Quincy Adams is the son of Abigail and John Adams. So you have a direct dynasty going on right there. John, I don't know if people watching this if you are a Democrat or Republican, and I don't care, but I can tell you that John Quincy Adams was neither. We kind of think of our political parties in America being divided down the middle. Are you conservative or are you liberal minded? Most people are somewhere in the middle. But our parties kind of represent that, and I think it's something that's come about over years of messing around with political parties and not quite getting it right. But for example, I just use John Quincy Adams as an example. So for example, John Quincy Adams changed parties multiple times during his political career. He started out as a Federalist. Federalist was a party, and that's really like the early presidents all were, Washington and that sort of thing, when they were, Federalist comes from the Federalist Papers, which preceded the Declaration of Independence. If you ever get a chance, it's maybe a 400-page book in paperback. The Federalist Papers are are pretty interesting, and maybe I might call them a required scan through. Not a required read for an American, but a required scan through for an American. Required read would be the Constitution of the United States, for example, so that whatever you are thinking politically or thinking about laws or the machinations to make laws and who you're voting for, think about the Constitution and does this jive with the Constitution. So I would call the Constitution required reading. The Federalist Papers is something that you can scan through, and that's kind of all I've done. But it's the precursor to Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and all that. And so it shows the way of thinking of the birth of a nation. And maybe since I'm American, I think that the only sustainable system is democracy, and I think that the democracy that we have in place in America is the best way of governing a country. I need to govern my words a little bit better, but is the best way of governing a country. It's like I say, it's the only way that can be sustained throughout the generation. It's the only way that has ever brought stability to a country, permanent stability to a country. I guess maybe somebody could say, well, what if you had a benevolent king that could get things done? Show me a benevolent king and we'll elect one. But but again, kings don't have term limits. So, there's just multiple things that work in a democracy, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Long story short, it took a while to kind of perfect our democracy. So you had, I'm using John Quincy Adams as an example. He started out as a Federalist. Then he became a Jeffersonian Democrat Republican. So Democrat Republican. Then he was in the National Republican Party. Then he was in a party called the Anti-Masonic Party. I guess there has historically been, I should probably research this a little bit more, but historically been a bit of prejudice or suspicion around the Masons. And I have to tell you, I don't understand it, because the Masons are not a social club, but it's something you join to help people and to help your community, to make you a better person. You know what I mean? There's not this massive conspiracy to overthrow and rule governments, particularly in the United States. So anyway, if you're one of those anti-Masonic conspiracy theory types, then rethink it, I would say. And then finally, a Whig party. That kind of brings up parties in general. I talked a little bit about our, kind of getting there. We have two main parties, a liberal party and a conservative party. But historically, there have been a lot more parties than that. In fact, a tremendous amount of parties. And some of the funny ones are, like, there's the Anti-Administration Party, which was started in 1791. All right, I don't know, check me on that one. But it was early on in America's history, and it was in opposition to the way that the government was run. Now, I don't know if they would have still been anti-administration if any of them had been voted in, but they didn't necessarily reveal that information. There was, in the 40s, there was the Vegetarian Party, and I guess their big thing was being vegetarian. I don't know how that would translate to foreign aid and military buildup and social programs and everything else that the government does, but maybe being a vegetarian just chills everybody out, and we won't get in any wars and everything will be cool. So I don't know. Anyway, people have hang on, that brings me to something else that's modern. These are all parties that are defunct, by the way. In 1959, now this date is significant. In 1959, they started the American Nazi Party. This is after World War II. So you had this, and that was a party in America. American Nazis. I mean, I guess there's still, neo-Nazis and stuff around there, but there's not an organized party. That party is defunct, thank God. But we do have, like, literal communist parties. At the same time, that American Nazi thing, we had our communist witch hunt going on. But ultimately, if you talk about freedom, people use the word freedom, liberty. They use it like just throwing it out there without really knowing what it means. Unfortunately, sometimes it means that you afford freedoms to other people that you don't necessarily like. Now, I believe that your freedoms end where another's begin. I can't smoke in a baby's crib because I am violating the freedoms of that baby. He did not choose to smoke. Just as an example off the top of my head. I can't park on your lawn because my freedom to park and my ownership of my property ends at the line. So I'm not going to park on your lawn. That would be a violation of your freedoms. And then that can be translated to, noise ordinances and this, that, and the other. Oh God, we can really go crazy with it. But that was there was a party called the Looking Back Party, which, I don't know, maybe they were just nostalgic. I don't know anything about the Looking Back Party, so if anybody knows anything about it, that would be interesting. It was one of those, I think maybe the idea was to throw back to political values of previous days. But looking back is always nice. You just think back about, the people I knew in my life and things that I've done and places that I've been. Oh, yeah, I just like looking back. And that's the kind of president that I'm going to be. We're just going to sit around and go, hey, man, you remember The Love Boat? Wasn't that a great show? God, that was great. Yeah. Hey, you remember that building that used to be down there on the corner? That was a beautiful building, wasn't it? That was great. Yeah. I think I'd be a pretty good president. Okay, so that's some of the defunct parties. Now, I was talking about the Vegetarian Party, but there are and parties. And by the way, that is in no way a complete list. The list is 100 parties long, but most all parties are like American Federalist Party, American Freedom Party, American. I mean, you know what I mean. They're kind of boring names, so you have to be careful. By the way, because there's a party called the American Freedom Party. Now, if I said to you, hey, what do you think about the American Freedom Party? You'd go, wow, that sounds great, man. I am all for America and I am all for freedom. So let's join. Don't join the American Freedom Party because it is a white supremacist party or white nationalist party. So, see, these parties they all cloak themselves in these names, that would evoke the greater good or something like that, or freedom and liberty. Like I say, those words get thrown around and abused so bad. It makes me so mad when people start talking about liberty and they don't know what liberty really is and why we should appreciate it. But anyway, I should have like a big American flag and like go on this rampage. But so anyway, research what people are telling you, and don't just get bills. By the way, are passed through this way. They'll have a name like helping the unfortunate bill or something. And you start reading it, and it's like, oh, it's really for making more parking for senators at the local bar, or something like that. You know what I mean? The bills are very carefully named. They're never going to call it the let's blow up the Empire State Building bill. But you better read them because it might be in there. I don't know. But so anyway, the way things are named are named very carefully, and you have to be very careful about it as a smart voter and a thinker for yourselfer in the political arena. I just realized I'm kicking myself because one of the things I did not want to do on Something Interesting was to do things that are very political. I'm trying to stay away from going, you know what I mean, like within the real spectrum of, like I say, white supremacy or anti-Masons or whatever. That's outside of the realm of normal political intercourse, and I don't mind, speaking out of it, against those things. But I'm not going to speak out if you're a Democrat. I'm not going to speak out against your views. If you're a Republican, I'm not going to speak out against your views. Anyway, there is a party called the Populist Party, which to me sounds a little socialist. If I heard populist, I'd start thinking, oh, is it like an economic socialist party or something like that? No, it's libertarian. It's a libertarian party. So why you need another one, I don't know. But the American Populist Party is a libertarian party, so it would be in a different spectrum than what I would have assumed a populist party would be called. There are two parties. I was talking about the Vegetarian Party. It's like you have one small issue. There are two political parties that are, one is the Legalize Marijuana Now Party, and the other one is U.S. Marijuana Party. Both with the only objection is to legalize marijuana. Again, what you would do about defense or highway spending or bridge construction or environmental protection, I don't know. They're like, well, once we get the pot through, we're pretty good. Whatever you want to do after that is cool with us. but there are two functioning parties today whose only platform is legalizing marijuana. I'm saving the best for last. I got one more. The Prohibition Party, it was started in 1869 after the Civil War for prohibition, to get rid of alcohol in all forms. Obviously that passed and then was repealed because it didn't work. But if I'm not mistaken, the Prohibition Party, you still can run on the Prohibition Party if that is your real platform. Now I'm saving the best for last. There is a party started in 2006, so it's a fairly new party. And I'll tell you what, I think if I joined a party, I'm actually an unaffiliated voter, if you must know. If I joined a party, it would be this one. It's the United States Pirate Party. And their platform is pirate politics. Army hearties. If I had a pirate hat, I have like this black leather jacket I could put. Well, it's not that far right. So, my Facebook is in Pirate Talk. So everything, you can set your Facebook up on your phone. All my stuff is like broad shot against her bow and this, that, and the other. And it takes me a while sometimes to figure out exactly what I'm doing. I've screwed it up a few times. But, ye be the changer of tongues. What language do you want? It goes on, and they update it from time to time. It's really clever, actually more clever than I could ever be if I ever sat down. So I love the Pirate Party. So Army mateys, I'm going to leave you with that, and we'll have another something interesting coming up as soon as I can get my junk together and put it together. Thanks again. Bye.